NBA draft is a week from tonight, and so I know everybody's excited about looking forward to another draft for the Knicks. They have the 8th pick. They also have the 27th pick in the first round and number 38 in the second round. And so as I promised, we're going to do a little something different this time around as we'll break down the draft, but I'm not going to do it. We're going to get an expert in here. Corey Tulaba is with Hardwood Herald, and he does a great job breaking down all of the players and talking about the draft. He's got great insight. He's got terrific videos on his YouTube page. And you can follow him on Twitter as well, Instagram. But that YouTube page is the one you want to go to because some of those videos are fantastic, take you in depth on each of the players. So I talked to Corey about the draft, who he sees at the top of this draft, the challenges in this very unique draft, which is in November. Generally, it's in June. And also, who's going to be there for the Knicks at 8 and who'd be a great fit. All right, Corey, let's just get right at this thing. I've said this draft sucks. Like, this is a draft where you're going to find a good 10-year guy somewhere in the first round. But if you're looking for a franchise-changing superstar, this is not the draft to be at the top. And that's why Minnesota and Golden State don't even want their picks. You dive deeper in the waters on the draft than I do. Clearly, this is your life. You put all your time into it. You do amazing stuff with your site, and you do great stuff on the film sesh. Because I learn a lot from a lot of that stuff too. I'll be honest with you. I steal a lot of that information from you. So I want you to tell me if you agree with me or if you think I'm crazy.
No, you're feeling the same thing that mostly everybody else is feeling, right? That this draft doesn't have that Luka Doncic, the Zion Williamson. You know, it's got guys who are going to be solid NBA players potentially, but nobody that just screams, can't miss prospect.
Right.
And that's why, like you mentioned, that Minnesota, Golden State aren't necessarily thrilled about winning the first and second pick in this specific year. If last year, if Golden State got the second pick and you pick up John Morant for the future to take over the mantle, you're a lot more excited. But
right.
This is a draft that, to me, it's all about expectations. If you are in the top 5, top 10, and you're like, this is the draft that we get our future, whatever, you might be let down. But if you're like, hey, we can get a solid guy that could be a piece to the puzzle, then with those expectations, you might actually get somebody useful and somebody that you'll be a fan of and won't be absolutely disappointed in, for the next 4 years of their rookie contract.
No matter who the Knicks pick, the fans will be disappointed at least for one night until they actually see what he can become. That's just the way Knicks fans are. And we'll get to the Knicks and that stuff because obviously that's really our focus in the conversation. But just overall in the draft. So if you were then to tell me, who are your top 3 players in this draft? And I'm not saying you don't have to tell me who's going 1, 2, 3 because I don't think – correct me if I'm wrong. Nobody knows this.
Nobody knows.
Okay. So your top 3, the players that you say, these 3 dudes, these are studs. These are the guys that you'd want to get in this draft.
Yeah. So my number 1 prospect in this draft is James Wiseman. Big man. And I know that's not the consensus. It's not a very popular opinion because, as we all know, everybody hates big men now. Everybody needs to be 6'8" and bombing threes and the right. 7'1",
7-foot wingspan.
Yeah, that's the archetype. So James Wiseman being at the top of my board has not been the most popular thing, but I'm going by what my eyes tell me, right? So he's my number 1 guy. Number 2 is Anthony Edwards. When you do look at your prototypical wing scorer, 6'5", long wingspan, can get to the hoop when he wants, which isn't necessarily all the time, and could hit step backs, has the combo moves. He has the whole package in him somewhere. It's, can he let it out? Yeah. And then 3, and this is a guy that we've known about since he was about 15 years old. It's LaMelo Ball. Mm-hmm. Personally, I'm not like the biggest LaMelo Ball fan that you'll find, but I have to acknowledge that when it just comes to talent, those 3 guys are in a tier of their own, and LaMelo certainly belongs up there as a talent. Whether or not he gets to that talent that he has, that's a different story. But when you're looking at whose talent jumps off the page, those are the 3 guys to me that are in a tier of their own.
Edwards scares me because watching and I watched full games of him at Georgia in college, and when you watch him, you see a dude that checks out, and you see a guy that winning is sort of nice, but it doesn't really matter. And you wonder, is it because he's immature and it's college and he's a one and done and he's not really invested in what he's doing there? Or is he just that guy? Is he the Dion Waiters type that's like, man, I'm too cool for school. I don't need to sweat. Is he that guy that when he gets to, 28 years old and wonders why he's on his 3rd different or 5th different team, the talent never registers? That's what good enough to get you fired is to me the worst thing that you can say about a prospect. And I think he's that guy. LaMelo is the one that everybody worries about the ball circus. And I don't know if he's that. I think I love like him, Hampton, RJ Hampton. They've played against grown men for the last couple of years. That does make a difference to me. You know, it does. And I wonder if that's going to translate for him as well. But if you think about this draft process, and how long have you been putting your life into these drafts?
I mean, this draft in particular feels like 5 years, but this one's been a year. I've been scouting like heavily for probably 2 to 3 years. Okay.
Yeah, so you obviously have gone through the usual draft process like we all have, which is the college. You watch the college season, then you get into sort of that pre-draft season. You got the combine, you get to see guys, you get measurements, all that stuff, and then you get the visits and the workouts, and then you hear from the agents who look good, who didn't look good, different things that happen in these workouts, the different stuff that I've heard over the years about some of these workouts where a player completely just becomes the pick and they weren't even looking at him, that kind of stuff.
Right.
You know that happens. This is a pandemic. These guys haven't played since March. And some of them actually haven't played since before that if they had injuries like Neesmith. And so you have no idea what you're getting. I mean, that kid, is it Tyrell Terry?
Tyrell Terry, yeah.
He went from 5'2" and 108 pounds. I heard he's 6'3" now and like 175. Like they're 18-year-olds. They grow in 6 months. It just happens. I have an 18-year-old. He's at house. He just keeps growing. So I get it. It's got to be, not just for you, for the players and the scouts, this process, for as long as it's gone, this has to be the most challenging draft to prognosticate and even make a pick.
Yeah, no doubt. I mean, for me personally, I'm going mostly by what I see in the film. I'm watching full games. It's been a blessing because I can watch, so many games, so much film on so many different guys, right? Because I've had the time. But if I was making NBA decisions, like you said, these things change so quickly, like one guy's weakness in March when things shut down, maybe it's not a weakness anymore. Like you mentioned RJ Hampton, here's a kid, you look at his film, as a shooter, his base was really thin, like he almost looked like he was chipping on a golf course with his footwork, and now you see videos of him working with Mike Miller, one of the, greatest shooters we've had over the last 10 to 15 years, and it looks completely different. And you wonder, right? Like, all right, well, it looks great in an open gym, and so I'm glad that he worked at it, but is it going to translate to game speed? So, as an evaluator, it's really tough because you can't get in the kids' heads. You could have a Zoom conference call and whatnot, but you can't really spend time. You can't take the kid to dinner. You can't get in the gym with them. You can't see if the kid was early to the workout, right, to really get a gauge of how serious is he taking this. It's tough, but look, that's why the NBA guys get paid the big bucks because they got to figure this stuff out. And then you're dealing with agents and everybody's got their own agendas that, thrown out there. I'm at the point I've got guys hitting me up trying to get, videos out to tweet them out, to prop their guys up. So it's this weird world that we've been living in because everybody wants to get eyeballs on their guys who have been working at their games in these curated 2.5, 3 minute video clips.
Yeah, it's just nothing like being in the gym watching a players. The other thing that you really want to see these prepackaged workouts. You don't know what you're really seeing or what you're getting out of those. And then of course it's the relationship aspect too of what kind of kid am I drafting. And I do think in the top 5 that matters more than anywhere else because I think outside the top 10 you could take a risk on somebody that might be a character flaw type if you feel like the talent's there and maybe we get him into our culture and we can get him right. But when you're top 5, you absolutely have to know what you're getting there, and that's what makes this crazy. It's not only the pandemic, but it's also a draft. Like you said, if you went back a year and the draft was Zion, Ja, RJ, and the what you saw in the last year's draft, it'd be a lot easier because you already knew it was top 3. The top 3 were given. Put your money down. This draft is so much different, and that's what's going to make this so compelling once we have it on Wednesday night. So with that in mind, the Knicks are in a different place now.
Yep.
Because the person running their draft is a veteran. I mean, this is Walt Perrin, who's been with the Jazz for almost 20 years running their drafts. And your expert opinion, how have the Jazz been as a team drafting players?
I mean, I think they've been pretty solid to great. You look at trading up and getting Donovan Mitchell. You're finding Rudy Gobert at the back of the draft, and those are their two cornerstone guys, right? So over the last few years, while you have hits and misses here and there, if you're able to find talent at the spots that they did and identify that talent, that's a major skill. And it's coming to New York. You don't know if they've necessarily had that same eye over the last however many years. So I think the Knicks are in a great spot this year. Everything seems stable, and like we mentioned with this draft where there is no consensus anywhere. Yeah, the Knicks fell back, but they might get a better player at their spot than the teams ahead of them are going to get, because it's just so bunched up and it flattens out. And to me, with everything that they have, the stability, the team that they hired, from Perrin to Thibodeau and just everybody in the organization, we got the Kentucky connection now. I think they're in a good spot.
Which is why I think you could put your money down that one of the 3 picks that they have to make, one of them's going to be a blue blood from Kentucky. I mean, there's no doubt in my mind. I don't know if it's going to be at 38 in the second round or if 27, if they stay at 27. One of these guys is going to be a Kentucky player. You can put your money on that one. All right, so like I mentioned, they have the 3 picks. And so I talk to a lot of Knicks fans on a regular basis. Angst is just part of the personality. You never take it personal. It's just it just comes with it. So, and especially on draft night. This is one, however, with the 8th pick, like you said, it's so wide open. So if I was going to ask you 3 guys that are going to be on the board at 8 in your opinion, without telling me who you think they should pick first, give me the 3 guys you think, the 3 best players who will be on the board at 8 on draft night.
Well, the 3 guys that I've heard that will probably be on the board, or at least, there's a good chance they'll be on the board, that the Knicks have been interested in, are Tyrese Halliburton. Obi Toppin, and Killian Hayes.
It's amazing that you said the first 2 I thought would never even get out of the top 5.
Yeah, well, I think that Halliburton, there's a much more realistic chance than Obi Toppin. Look, I know how Knicks fans feel about Obi Toppin, and it's like, new age Amari. Yeah, maybe he's athletic, maybe he'll be able to score, but he's not going to be able to switch out on the perimeter. He's not going to be able to guard pick and roll and all that stuff. But to me, I think that one, offensively, he's a great fit in a front court with Mitchell Robinson because he's got a skill set that meshes really well. And 2, if you're a believer in Mitchell Robinson as a Knicks fan, then you probably should think that he's going to be able to clean up some of the messes that these guys leave him every now and then. But to me, he's a guy that, like you said, he's probably not going to be there. But if he is, I think Knicks fans should be overjoyed. And if Tom Thibodeau can get Carlos Boozer to play, and contribute winning ball, Obi Toppin is going to be able to as well.
That's a quality reference right there. You're right about Boozer. I looked at Toppin and I saw a guy who's, one of the complaints. Well, he's too old. His runway for development he's 22. Like
22 years old.
I don't understand that, but that's how fans are. They'd rather have the 18-year-old that won't be able to play for 2 years than the 22-year-old who could step in and play. I mean, Obi Toppin might be the 3rd best player on the roster when he walks. That's where the Knicks are right now. But yeah, there are the other issues that come with it, but I look at him also just the explosive player, the live body, and a guy that you could tell will feed off that kind of energy. If you've got a guy, a lob monster like Mitchell Robinson, and then you've got a guy like Toppin who's a highlight machine as well, if he runs the floor, all you need is a point guard, which I know it's like saying all the Browns need is a quarterback, right?
Right.
It's been an issue for this franchise for a long time. But I like him as a fit, and I wouldn't be surprised if there was an opportunity to move up and it didn't cost a lot, that maybe they would do it. Halliburton is interesting. And Halliburton, by the way, from what I understand, I don't think he's even met with the Knicks, right? He hasn't even.
I haven't heard that he has.
Yeah,
but
exactly. So it's straight. He's the all-around talent who's got that funky. It's like a Kevin Martin kind of.
It's super weird. He's just like, you know what? It looks pretty coming out of his hand, but his footwork is weird. Yeah. The release is weird.
40%. You can't.
40%. But he's kind of the guy that I think people wanted Lonzo Ball to be, except I think his shot is going to translate. His thing is, and I actually think he's a pretty good fit on the Knicks, because if you're looking at him to be your point guard who's going to be the primary creator, you're going to be disappointed, because his handle is not tight enough for that to happen. And then because of that wonky shot, while he could hit it at a standstill, he can't hit it off the dribble because he can't create enough separation to get room for that shot to get off consistently. But if you look at RJ Barrett and you look at his strengths, and if you look at him as a building block, he's a guy who will thrive in the ball in his hands and is a good passer and playmaker, right? So if you look at Halliburton as a guy who he's kind of like a 1.5. You know, he could play 1, he could play 2, off ball, on ball. On ball, maybe, the ball gets kicked to him and now he's creating off hard closeouts. He'll create a little bit in pick and roll. He'll get out in transition where he's got more space and find guys like RJ and Mitch who will thrive in transition. But then when RJ's got the ball, he could go space out in the corner, knock down shots. From that perspective, he's a pretty clean fit. But again, I mentioned expectations. It's all about expectations in this draft. If you try to turn these guys into something they're not, you're going to be disappointed. But if you look at his strengths, he has enough strengths that you could find something there. And from all accounts, from everything I hear, everybody who's around him loves him. He's got the infectious personality that, will light the entire team up and build a culture. And look, I grew up as a Bulls fan, and so I'm very familiar with Tom Thibodeau. That dude loves culture. He loves those guys. And look, at 8, Halliburton seems like pretty solid value, and while I'm not a major draft for fit guy, he does fit the current roster pretty well. So if he ended up there, it's not like anything to hang your head on. He's a guy that will help with winning basketball for sure.
I just, like I said, I'm all about shooters, or as Mike D'Antoni used to say, I don't need a shooter, I need a maker. And I'm all about those guys, the guys that actually can make. I always look at shooting percentage, and I'll get to that in a minute. But you mentioned a name. But Killian Hayes was someone that I liked early in the process when I was first doing a lot of research, because strong body, strong lower body, can use it well, pretty smart, a decent shooter, good feel for the game, all that stuff. But I got to be honest with you. Every time the Knicks take a French guy first round, it hasn't worked out very well. Now, I know he's not really French because his dad, he's American, but you know what I'm saying.
I know what you're saying. I know what you're saying. The Frank Hive's going to be mad at you.
Again, it's like, well, I know the Ntilikina Hive will come at me, but it's not even about that. It's also about Freddie Weiss.
Yeah.
Well, so it sort of feels like, how about we just not do the French guy in the first round this time around, But still, I did like him. I do think that, I guess there has been some connection to him. But tell me more about Killian Hayes' game that I should want him as a Knick.
Yeah, well, I like Killian Hayes a lot too. And at the Knicks spot, I think it's a perfect position for him. A lot of people love him on the internet. Like, he is, the belle of the ball on the internet. And, you got people who have him as high as 1. But I think from everything I've heard, teams don't love him nearly as much as the internet does. And he's a guy that's probably going to swing around the Knicks spot to, say, like the 11th or 12th spot. And it's because his highlight tape is phenomenal. He's got the James Harden step back, side steps. He's got kind of that D'Angelo Russell.
Yeah, all those flaw? Well, there's a flaw that they don't show you in the highlights.
Right, and that's what it is. He has some flaws. For as good a size as he has, 6'5", 200, good wingspan, he's very below the rim. And while, in his professional league, it's not that he had trouble finishing. He had a pretty decent percentage. But when you looked at the game specifically, where he was going up against athleticism and length, that's where it was really tough for him. So when I'm watching prospects, I'm not just looking at the numbers and saying, all right, well, he shot, 58% at the rim. Well, how did he look when he's going to be dealing with guys that he's going to deal with on an every night basis in the NBA? So for me, his finishing at the rim is a major concern because he just has no vertical pop. And while he's got like some shifty moves, he's got the hesitations, the head fakes, all that to create space and whatnot. Anthony Davis is waiting at that rim. There's only so much a head fake from an 18, 19-year-old kid is going to do. You know what I mean?
You said that. I'm glad you said that. Now, let's just do a couple of quick hits there now on the rest of the different names that have come at me from fans who, they're the experts, but also, other names I'm curious about as well. So just quick hits on these now and I'll jump off exactly what you said there. Kyrie Lewis, Alabama. Everybody you talk to who's like a fan who's watching highlight films, like you said, they love it. Euro step. He's got a good handle. He can shoot it. He gets into the paint, makes a lot of things happen. He reminds you of all the different, those point guards, those dribble penetration point guards we've seen. And I watched him in a full game against a big team, and I was like, nope. And I said the same thing. This guy's got no bounce. He just doesn't get up. And I know he's got the floater, and I know he's got the Euro step. But I just watch and I go, I don't know. Can he finish? I know he's fast with the basketball, and that's great. So you can't stop what you can't catch. But in a half court, when he's trying to get to the basket, I'm not sure he's a guy that I'm going to see be able to finish against the trees, the big athletic bigs that you see in today's NBA. Am I out of my mind?
You're not. I am going to say this is probably the first time that we feel like we're going to disagree, because I've been driving the Kyra Lewis bandwagon since about March. I personally have him as my 5th favorite prospect on the board, because while he does definitely need to improve his finishing, and part of that is, he's a pretty thin dude, in the college season specifically. He's put weight on. Everybody's put weight on, right? That's every pre-draft, every skinny guy has put weight on. But I look at his skills in the modern NBA, and he at least has an elite skill with his speed, in that De'Aaron Fox, the Kobe White.
Yeah. But De'Aaron Fox can get over the rim.
De'Aaron Fox got bounce.
Gets over the rim.
He's got bounce. Those guys got bounce. So
Colin Sexton even can get up to the rim. Like I worry about guys that can't get to the rim.
I don't blame you.
That's beating a lot of times early on in his career.
Physically. That's his weakness. He's got to be able to finish amongst the trees. I saw enough encouraging signs where he's kind of doing midair, left hand finishes. I think his touch is pretty good, and it's going to be something that you're going to have to be patient on. I don't think he's coming out of the gates to have a Ja Morant like rookie year, and I don't have him at the same level of prospect that I had De'Aaron Fox on by a long shot. Okay. But in this draft in particular, I think some of his skills are actually underrated. And I say that because if you look around the internet, and maybe not on the Knicks side, but if you look around the internet, you read the mocks from all these sites, they have had him in the 20s for so long. And in a draft like this, where there's no sure things, when I was watching him, I looked at his game and I said, he's going to be an NBA player. Now, expectations, does that mean he's going to be an all-star? Probably not, right? But at worst, if he could be a 6-man change of pace guard.
Top 10 pick.
It's a top 10 pick, but
I did the math, by the way. On average, 2 to 3 of the top 10 picks per year in the last 10 years of the draft have become an all-star. 2 to 3. I mean, that's a terrible percentage. It's baseball. That's a terrible percentage, and that's why. And when you're a franchise that's always in the lottery, you gotta hit on one. And this is the 4th straight year for the Knicks. All right, again, quickly, a couple other names. Aaron Nesmith, I absolutely love. Why I love him? Because he only played half a season, so there's a lot of question marks. But I love shooting, and I don't care. You take 8 shots a game in 14 games, eight threes a game in 14 games, and shoot over 50%. You got a clip. Now, I like him. Is he a fit at 8?
I personally think he is. I think most people expect him to probably go in the 12 to 18 range. I think 18 would be on the very low end. I think the absolute perfect fit for him would be New Orleans, because he's a guy that, is just going to be able to play off, shoot scorers.
All the attention in the paint, right.
Yeah, but for the Knicks in particular, I don't think it would be a reach, because you look at him, 6'7", great wingspan. He's basically the same size as Andre Iguodala with wingspan and height. Grown man body already. Mm-hmm. And like you said, he's got a strap. Like, you can't fake your way into 52% on 8 attempts a game.
8 attempts. That's the key number, is the 8 attempts part. Another guy that jumps out that has actually had a lot of connection, a lot of talk about him and the Knicks, is Devin Vassell.
Yep.
Now, there's another player who also can shoot it. Obviously not like the Nesmith numbers, but can shoot it. Has a strong physical ability as well, and a defender. Do you like him, and what do you know about him?
Love him. Now, as much as I love him, I don't love him necessarily for the same reason that everybody else does, because I think he's the seamless D guy. I'm more worried about his shot than I think anything else, and not because I saw a wonky clip on the internet.
How about that? What was he doing? And who was training him? Look, they said, oh no, he's just messing around at the end of practice.
Yeah, of course.
I know. I used to coach, dude. I would tell him, why are you doing that? Because you're going to mess up your mechanics, or it becomes a muscle memory thing.
Right.
Never ever mess around with your form. No chance, especially in the draft.
If you looked at him shooting 40% over 2 years, here's the difference between a guy like him and Naismith. He was doing it on 3.5 attempts a game. Yeah. So when you're shooting 3.5 attempts, you're shooting the open catch and shoot shots. You're not doing anything off the bounce. You have space, you got time. So I think he'll end up being like a 36% shooter-ish. But defensively, the kid is a monster. He is a genius team defender. Genius. Like, I was blown away. He is the only guy in my video series that I started with defense.
Yeah.
You know, like, because he just reads the game so well. I had to rewind so many possessions because I was like, he read this before the point guard even thought about reading any of this stuff. He's getting in the passing lanes, but not over gambling. You know, he's protecting the rim over a block a game as a small forward. Florida State, I mean, you know how their defense goes. He's switching 1 through 5. You know, he's guarding point guards full court. I was just like, I was in love with his defensive game, and I realized that while I don't think he's going to be like a 20-point scorer, all he's got to do is kind of be a complement on offense. And the other thing, he's a Tom Thibodeau kind of guy. You know, I look at him like the modern Luol Deng. You know, like just that, going to let the offense come to him, but he's going to do it all on the defensive end. And for Thibodeau, how do you get on the floor? You got to defend.
Yeah, there's no question about that. All right, a couple other guys. Isaac Okoro, I say great body, defensive potential, all the stuff you want. Another guy, like, Toppin to me is a guy that he can step in the league and play right away, which I think is important for teams that don't have a lot of talent on the roster. Yeah. Okoro probably physically could as well, but don't love it. I don't love the shooting, and I always worry about the idea of anybody that's under 30 from 3, even when they shoot a low amount of them. There is some talk though, yeah, but he's a pretty good shooter. Like again, is it Patrick Williams is another one that doesn't shoot a lot of threes, but his free throw percentage kind of makes you think, all right, he's probably got good form. You can teach it. I don't know about, like, to me, those are the unknowns. Those are the uncertainties that I worry about with those guys. Do you see the same thing?
100%. I'm much lower on Isaac Okoro than most other people because they look at the athleticism, the defensive ability, right? He's actually pretty skilled where he's got like an okay handle. It's not like super shifty, but it's functional. He's got pretty good playmaking skills. But here's the thing, and this is where college differs from the pros, right? He is a grown man, strong as anything. He could bully his way into certain spots in college. In the NBA, when he's on the perimeter and a screen comes, what's the team going to do? Back away and go under, right? They're going to, and is he going to be able to get into the paint and use all these other skills? So he has to turn into it, not only like an adequate, but like a good enough 3-point shooter that teams have to guard him. And that is way easier said than done, right? Because for every guy who, Andre Iguodala, Jimmy Butler, the guys that he gets comped to, who have made it, you also have your Stanley Johnsons who didn't. And if you're going to take him, you better be confident in your player development staff and your shooting coach. If he went to the Spurs and was working with Chip England, I feel a lot more confident, with his shot and him as a prospect. But, it's all about, can he develop that shot? And like you mentioned, the free throw percentage, he's not a very good free throw shooter either. So
that scares me. I always run away from that.
It scares me.
Yeah.
It scares me.
And you know what? When you talk about him, and I love this player, but that's the part that scares me. You already have it in RJ Barrett. RJ Barrett is a physically strong guy that I saw him knocking over vets, grown men, driving to the basket. Physically, he's already ready for the league. But when they went under and he still had to put the ball down, his handle isn't tight enough for him to be able to break you down and get where he wants. And I just saw a guy that struggled at times when he just had to make decisions and he couldn't do it physically. Not a good enough shooter. Catch and shoot, I'm sure he'll get there. The free throw shooting scares the crap out of me with RJ because if you're still shooting 60% and he shot it in college as well,
yep,
you were the man in college, like that scares me about it. Do I need another guy on my roster that does the same thing?
It's a terrible fit. You don't draft for fit, but it's a terrible fit.
Yeah, I certainly don't love it. All right. I took enough of your time on this stuff. We're picking your brain. Don't know if I left any other names out. I got my list here of guys that I really wanted to know about when it comes to who's going to be on the Knick radar. So, Corey, I appreciate you breaking all that stuff down. In about a minute, tell me this. The Knicks have 6 players from the last 3 drafts on their roster. I mean, they do. At least they have 6. If they make all 3 picks this year, that's 9 on the roster, and they don't trade anybody. But out of the RJ, Brazdeikis, Kevin Knox, Mitchell Robinson, we've talked about, Frank Ntilikina, we talked about, and then Damian Dotson. out of those 6 that they have on the roster, all right, and you've done these drafts in the last couple of years, who's the guy that you're like 10 years from now when we're doing this, he's still going to be a guy that you talk about as a really good NBA player?
I would say the best chance is probably R.J. Barrett and Mitchell Robinson. But, the other guys, I think, will probably bounce around and find their ways. Maybe Kevin Knox has a semi-long career because he's got the package and athleticism that teams will continue to take shots on him. Maybe he finds the right spot off the bench, guy who could fill it up. But I think R.J. Barrett and Mitchell Robinson are your guys. And while I think that this is a big year for Mitch in particular because he's got to prove that he could stay on the floor to make use of all that potential, I think that R.J. Barrett is a hard enough worker and does bring enough positives that he'll be able to contribute to teams for a really long time. So, I would really focus on not falling in love with necessarily anybody, but if I'm looking at guys to develop and really I think are going to have a shot, I would pick RJ and Mitch.
All right, good stuff. I agree with you on that one, and we'll see how many of these guys actually stick around on the roster going forward because they're going to be doing they'll have to be changing up this roster for sure going forward. Corey, Appreciate the time, my man. That was great information. All the best.
Hey, man, thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
Great stuff there from Corey. Again, if you want to check him out, Hardwood Herald. Hardwood Herald. Not that easy to say, but it's definitely easy to type. Go to his YouTube page. A lot of great film sessions on all the players that you've been asking about for this draft. You got a week to do some of your own research, and he's done a lot of it for you. It's a great conversation. Hope you enjoyed it. If there's any comments to make, you know where to make them in the comments section. Come at me. Hope everybody has a good night. Look forward to what's going to be a real exciting week next week as the NBA season finally returns. Take care, everybody.